watching Sunday Sound Off with Frank Boal.
Welcome back, everyone, to Sunday Sound Off. Our first hot topic of the night. Who will be the next head coach of Mizzou? That's $1 million question right now. And Vahe, we will start with you. What do you think?
Well, it completely infinite, open-ended question, like you say, Frank. And one thing, you can separate it into a couple different sort of categories. What's the argument for continuity on this staff, for instance? That's one question. Then if you want to make a case for that, then the second part of that question is who's the right guy on that staff? It's sort of rock, paper, scissors with a couple guys that have certain aspects of their pedigree seem to fit, but maybe other guys have something more. Then the other question is, look at who's doing the hiring. Is this we know it's Mack Rhoades' hire, but how much is he going to have guidance from above, and how much will the curators trust him to go out and do this fully? And if you do just look at Mack Rhoades' profile, all we really know is, well, he's the guy who hired Tom Herman at Houston. So does that naturally make Tom Herman a candidate? I think it probably does. But of course, Houston has its own unique aspects, and how somebody fits is as important as anything else about a job. So that's just one little slice of this to consider. You're right, there's going to be other names we're going to hear. I don't know how fast we should expect this process to be. I don't think we're going to learn a lot more about what they're going to try to do until Wednesday when he addresses it. Mack Rhoades does.
Steven, you have any choices out there that you like? Any guys?
Well, I'll tell you what, those three choices right there, I wouldn't expand the search much further than that. With Tom Herman, that's the guy that Mack Rhoades hired at Houston, and Tom Herman was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State last year when they won the national championship. He has Houston undefeated right now, and oddly enough, Houston faced Memphis in a heck of a football game last night. And Houston won. Memphis, the head coach, Justin Fuente, is a former quarterback, played at Oklahoma, was a co-offensive coordinator at TCU, has done a wonderful job in Memphis. And there's some connections there. As I mentioned, Mack Rhoades hiring Tom Herman. Barry Odom was the defensive coordinator at Memphis under Justin Fuente, so they can work together. So I look at those two guys. And then off the staff, Barry Odom is one of the best young defensive minds in college football right now. He resurrected the Memphis defense. You've seen what he's done with the Missouri defense. They're championship quality. The offense has not been championship quality, to say the least, but the defense has been terrific in his first year as defensive coordinator, and he's also a former Mizzou linebacker. And then one other guy you have to look at on the staff is Andy Hill, who's been the best recruiter there. He played there. He's been there forever. He's like Mr. Mizzou, and that's a guy that's really been a fantastic recruiter in the Kansas City area, been responsible for a lot of talent going to Mizzou. And so those four guys, I think my search would begin and end right there.
Okay, Seren, you think they'll expand it a little bit more? I know some Mizzou alums will think, why not Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, well, no, of course we're going to expand the list. You just heard Stephen St. John, who's maybe the most passionate Missouri fan I know, say the list begins and ends there. So none of those guys will be considered. That's how Missouri does it. They perpetually disappoint their fan base, and I expect them to do the same thing here. I hope that's not the case. Look, I always like a guy who's been a head coach before. I think that's what they did with Gary Pinkel. So I'd look at a guy, Justin Fuente would probably be the guy I'd lean to because he's playing with his players. That's not the case down in Houston. But look, at the end of the day, let's just hope that Mack Rhoades is a new era of actually pleasing the fan base, because the basketball hire was maybe pleasing for some of the old guard, but when you walk away from some of the candidates that they had a shot at in basketball, they left a lot of people wanting more. So let's hope the football hire is better.
Here's an interesting question as far as I'm concerned, Vahe. Everything that's happened over the past week or so at Mizzou, you're on the outside looking in, and you're a coach, and they approach you about the job. Do you still consider that a good job?
Oh, I think so. Look, I think this job is in a little bit of flux right now because of what the recent events have been. There's an expression, out of chaos comes order. Of course, out of chaos comes chaos sometimes too. But I do think what's hard to see right now is what the steps of reconciliation are going to be to stabilize everything on campus. But let's just consider this is a program with a baseline of winning now. For a long time, it was known as a so-called sleeping giant. Because of its sort of odd nature, being the only major Division I FBS school in a state that has two areas such as St. Louis and Kansas City in particular. So I think that has sort of been snapped to life. What's going to be interesting is who Missouri does identify in terms of that would be the right fit, and who's ready to love them back. And I think that's the part we can't know right now. I mean, how this is all going to be translated, just even in the weeks to come, how fast the coaching search is going to be. But I do think the job will still hold great appeal.
Stephen?
Well, I mean, it's an SEC job. You know you can win at Missouri in the SEC because they've done it. 2 of the last 4 years, they've been in the SEC championship game. They have great recruiting bases in Kansas City and St. Louis. You've seen them recruit very successfully in Texas. They started to creep into Georgia and Florida. Sure, there's some challenges, obviously, with what's happened on the Mizzou campus in the past week, but any football coach that believes that he can win at any level will believe that they can win at Missouri. And I think if you find the right coach that understands the challenges but also understands what's happened there the past decade or so with the tremendous amount of NFL talent that's been groomed at Mizzou and how they've won in the Big 12 and how they've won in the SEC. Now, they haven't won the conference championship, but they've done everything but. They've had a Heisman Trophy finalist, and like I said, you've proven that you could win at the highest level at Mizzou and groom that NFL talent. So, of course, it's still a good job.
Saran, you're a coach, yay or nay?
Absolutely, for all the reasons everyone said, because number one, it's proven you can be a divisional champion, but you still have ceiling there. If you come in and win the conference, you've done something that no one's done in a long, long time there. So not only do you know you've got the resources to win, that's been proven by Gary Pinkel and his staff, but you've still got someplace to go to be even better than Gary Pinkel. That's got to be an attractive job for anybody out there.
All right, our final hot topic, gentlemen, with today's win over Denver, will the Chiefs make the playoffs? Stephen?
The answer is yes. I said on Friday on my show that if the Chiefs would win in Denver, they'd make the playoffs. They have a very manageable schedule the rest of the way, and I think that was just a huge monkey to get off their back to win in Denver, to finally beat Peyton Manning in a Broncos uniform. And the way they beat him, they humiliated him. On the day that he broke records, he also got benched, and he looked like a shell of his former self. The defense looked absolutely dominating like it was supposed to. This was the formula that they were supposed to follow this season. This was why we thought they'd be a playoff team. A tremendous defense and a quarterback that did not turn the football over, that managed the game. Alex Smith didn't play well, but he didn't have to. And if he would have played that way the first time around against Denver, and if he wouldn't have turned the ball over in that game, they would have won that game too. So I think that was a big, big moment for the Chiefs and Andy Reid and the whole squad. And I think based on their strength of schedule, their lack of a tough schedule, I think they're going to make the playoffs as a wild card this year.
Saran, 15 seconds, yay or nay?
Yeah, look, to be determined is what I tell you. Let's see how they react to this game. They had big wins against Seattle and New England and then frittered it away with a loss against the Raiders. This was a giant win. Make no mistake about it. This regime had to get this win, but they're not going to be +5 in the turnovers. Defense, 5 straight games, holding opponents under 20 is a great sign, but it's to be determined. Let's see how they react after getting this big win under their belt.
All right, gentlemen, when we come back, we're going to get some final thoughts from the panel. It's their time to sound off on anything that's on their minds. You're watching Sunday Sound Off.